The future wife's open relationship idea destroyed everything. Imagine you're just months away from marrying the love of your life, and then she looks you in the eyes and says she wants to sleep with someone else, just once, before the wedding. What would you do? In today's story, you'll hear exactly how that conversation unfolded, and why it changed everything. Jen and I have shared a friendship that dates back to our childhood. Our parents shared a bond that lasted a lifetime. We shared our childhood and embarked on a romantic journey in our teenage years. It seemed as though our families had anticipated it all along. They envisioned more for us than we ever could. During my pursuit of a master's degree, I relocated to a different city while Jen stayed behind in our hometown, diligently working towards her nursing degree. After a year spent navigating the complexities of a long-distance relationship, we reached the mutual decision to embrace friendship, freeing ourselves from the weight of romantic expectations. We continued to be the best of friends while exploring relationships with others. It felt strange, for we both understood that this was merely a fleeting moment, destined to lead us back to one another eventually. Upon graduation, I chose to remain in the city where I earned my master's degree and embarked on my professional journey in my chosen field. As I awaited the transfer back to my hometown, a sense of anticipation filled me. When the news finally arrived, joy surged through me like a warm embrace. Jen found herself in a long-term relationship with a kind-hearted man, yet there lingered an unshakable sense that he was fatigued by the bond we shared. I grasped the atmosphere and withdrew out of reverence, even though our conversations would occur several times a year. My boss and mentor, whom I shall refer to as Paul, a 44-year-old man, was truly a remarkable individual, and we forged a strong friendship. He guided me through the intricacies, and one day he descended from his lofty perch to engage in conversation. He conveyed that an opportunity was available in a distant city for a duration of 2 years, and that it would soon be announced. He outlined the role, and while the compensation wasn't substantial, it encompassed all costs, including rent, hotel accommodations, and travel-related expenses. Essentially, my base would be in Tokyo, with occasional travels to various Asian cities for a few days at a time. I contemplated the matter, engaging in discussions with my friends and parents. Paul remarked that it was a challenging position, yet it would serve as an excellent opportunity to demonstrate my capabilities and ascend the ranks. I pondered, why not? By saving a significant portion of my salary, I can also acquire invaluable experience. Paul mentioned that he would have a conversation with the old man, and if I desired it, he would put in a good word for me. He recounted how he undertook a similar endeavor years prior, and it proved beneficial for his career. And thus, I set forth. The inaugural year was nothing short of dreadful, adapting to the nuances of culture and social norms, not just in Japan, but also in the other countries I would explore for work. One aspect that caught me off guard was the accessibility of women. Wherever I ventured, the warmth towards foreigners was palpable. I had the pleasure of experiencing the exquisite offerings of the East. These were not women from the developing world. The majority possessed a high level of education. I engaged in numerous casual relationships, making it abundantly clear to each partner that I had no interest in anything long-term or the prospect of marriage, as my stay was merely temporary. I found myself committing to an additional 2 years. Paul would make several visits each year, whether for vacation or to oversee various projects, and I must confess, we experienced some rather messy moments in a few cities, namely Angeles City, nestled in the Philippines, along with a handful of others. The contract had concluded, and I returned home. Make a substantial down payment on a charming home just beyond the city's edge. Having spent time in a bustling metropolis of 37 million, I found myself yearning for a breath of fresh air. During my month at home, I found myself in the company of my parents, and there was Jen too. She and the other guy had ended their relationship a year prior, and we began to engage in deeper conversations, despite having maintained contact throughout the years. We rekindled our romance. I restrained myself from indulging in my desires, gripped by a deep-seated fear of the unknown consequences that might follow. During my time in Asia, I found myself entangled in a web of fleeting connections, grappling with an insatiable desire for multiple partners. As my relationship with Jen deepened, I sought to rein in that urge. It was common knowledge among everyone, including Jen, that I had been dating. Yet on social media, there were only sporadic glimpses of me with various women. My mother referred to me as a whore master on several occasions, and to be honest, it hurt a bit. At this moment, everything begins to unravel. Jen and I shared a bed, and to put it simply, she was quite taken aback. She remarked that I had changed, that I was never quite like this in the past. She intended it as a compliment, suggesting that I had accumulated a wealth of experience, albeit in a roundabout way. She posed a series of inquiries, and I must confess I did engage in a bit of trickle-truthing. I refrained from disclosing the precise figure, for even when divided by 3, it held an unsettling weight. Without question, I was certain of my loyalty to her and my ability to remain steadfast. The notion I had unwittingly planted in her mind that evening would later blossom into significant complications. Naturally, our families were overjoyed at the prospect of our union. It was destined to unfold like this. Our journey was flourishing, and after a heartfelt conversation with her parents, I took the leap and proposed. She settled in, and all was wonderful. There were certain signals that raised my suspicions, such as her inquiry about my happiness with her. As December of 2019 approached, time seemed to accelerate. The wedding was scheduled for June 2020. Surely we are all familiar with the events of 2020, aren't we? Christmas was wonderful, and as we approached New Year's, we would soon experience the first D-Day. As I settled in to tackle some tasks on the computer, Jen and her cousin Tammy, a 32-year-old woman, were engrossed in browsing through various wedding materials. My acquaintance with Tammy dates back to our childhood, and we shared a good rapport. Jen inquired about the possibility of a conversation, while Tammy entered the living room and settled onto the sofa. I took a seat at the table, ready to engage in conversation with Jen. She begins by instructing me not to interrupt or panic. She has a desire to discuss a particular matter. She articulates the disparity in our intimacy, expressing her belief that I would ultimately find dissatisfaction with her. She fears that I might betray her, and she is concerned about the potential impact on our future children and the integrity of our relationship should I falter. In that moment, a thought crossed my mind. It seemed inevitable that I was on the brink of being cast aside. Just when I believed the situation couldn't possibly deteriorate further, the voice of the infomercial narrator echoes in my mind. But wait, there's more. Jen inquired whether I would consider opening our relationship, suggesting that it might provide her with valuable experience and alleviate some of her insecurities. She assures me that I need not worry, for I am the only man she has ever truly loved, which is why none of her past relationships have culminated in marriage. I found myself in complete agreement with her on that matter, as my sentiments mirrored hers. At this moment, I can't help but feel that this is all just a jest, and she isn't being serious in the slightest. This simply cannot be unfolding, can it? As this event took place a year and a half ago, I will endeavor to remember the key details. She claims she will exclusively engage with strangers, steering clear of anyone within our circle or workplace. It will not occur with the same individual on 2 separate occasions, devoid of any emotional bond. I found myself thinking, what on earth? As the truth dawned on me, the air caught in my throat. I never imagined a heart could leap so dramatically, as if it were trying to vault straight into the very core of my throat. I am not typically one to express anger or resort to violence, yet here I find myself shouting. I'm beginning to grasp the reasons behind Tammy's decision to remain nearby. I shouted, "Tammy, did you encourage her to do this?" Tammy claims her presence is solely to offer support to Jen. Incredible. I truly appreciate it. Then Jen remarked that I was free to act as I pleased within the same parameters, to which I responded with a firm no. At this moment, I find myself consumed by frustration, and as I put these words down, the anger within me simmers fiercely. I then expressed that I have no interest in one-night stands. All I desire is a single soul. Who does she say? I gazed at Tammy, meeting her eyes, and expressed my desire, saying, "I want to be with you, Tammy." Now I find myself provoking a reaction from Jen, and Tammy, caught off guard, is blushing and visibly uneasy. Jen declines. She is family, a person we both know, and the mere thought of suggesting it feels utterly distasteful to me. I find myself completely immersed in a world that feels utterly surreal. What on earth is this all about? We exchanged heated words for a while, and I warned her that if she proceeded down this path, her relationship would come to an end. I stand firmly opposed to this. My love for her is unwavering, and I believe we can navigate any challenge together, but this is a line I cannot cross. I stormed away, clutching my pillow, and retreated to the guest room. Faint sounds drifted up from downstairs, but the words eluded my ears. It might have been a side-splitting jest had it not stretched into an hour-long dialogue. I spent the entire night awake, and as a result, I was utterly useless at work the following day. That day marked the beginning of Jen's 2 weeks of night shifts, providing us with the space we needed. At least we wouldn't be home together during that time, allowing us both to cool down and revisit the situation later. Each day, a meal awaited me in the fridge, accompanied by a heartfelt note that simply said, "I love you." She would send messages often, yet I responded with brevity. On the Thursday night of her upcoming shift, I settled at the PC to sift through some files when an email notification caught my eye. It was a hotel reservation for a lovely establishment conveniently located near my office. I am quite familiar with it, as I frequently visit with my colleagues. I find myself pondering whether she is meant to be working, yet perhaps she yearns to extend an apology and whisk me away for an evening of revelry. The following morning, I find myself anticipating her message or call, hoping for an invitation, yet all she asks is about my day. Then she declares her happiness. She has just one more night of the night shift to endure. How is it possible that she has one more night and a hotel reservation? I found myself unwell, feeling the weight of pressure in my office. I began to peruse various dating sites, particularly those profiles that lack photographs. I'm unable to locate anything. Paul strolls in and inquires if I'd like to join him for lunch, his eyes taking in the disarray that surrounds me. He inquires about what's happening, and I share the details with him. Paul is a tough individual who follows his own path, yet he has consistently backed my relationship with Jen. He proposes we grab lunch at a hotel restaurant, and I can't help but exclaim, "Absolutely not, not that place." He was unaware of that aspect. We venture out for lunch, yet I find myself feeling queasy, unable to partake in food. I have no desire to indulge in a drink. He claims that I cannot function under these conditions and that I am free to take as much time off as I need, compensated and uncompensated if necessary. I informed him that I can no longer be present at my home. A part of me clings to the hope that this reality is but a figment of my imagination as I search for her in the shadows of my mind. I hurriedly make my way home, cramming as much of my belongings into my car as possible before returning to the office. Paul suggests we should position ourselves at the hotel and bide our time until she arrives for check-in. Well, I'm certainly not a private investigator or a sleuth. I resemble Inspector Clouseau more closely. I found myself grappling with my reluctance, yet an undeniable curiosity compelled me to seek the truth. We settled into the lounge bar, and I began to down drink after drink, clinging to the hope that this was all just a figment of my imagination. At approximately 6:30, Paul gently taps my shoulder, and there she stands at the front desk, notably out of uniform. I feel an overwhelming urge to lash out, to unleash a torrent of emotions, rage, despair, frustration, all swirling within me. I'm uncertain. After she steps into the elevator, we linger for a full 10 minutes before Paul and I make our way to the front desk. I request the reception to connect me to Jen in her designated room, and the phone begins to ring. Upon her response, I found myself shouting into the receiver, my voice laced with confusion. "Jen, I warned you that if you went down this path, it would lead to an end. I have concluded the wedding. The relationship is over." I ended the call and swiftly made my exit. Where shall we venture next? I returned to Paul's, and now my phone is buzzing with notifications. The sole individual I reached out to was my father, and I conveyed, in a manner suitable for all audiences, the events that transpired and my need to temporarily depart from town. It was not a conversation, and I regret the way I addressed my father. The phone rang incessantly for 2 days straight. Calls from every corner of the world rang out to me, yet I chose silence in response. Uncertainty enveloped me, leaving me at a loss for action. The only way I could articulate my feelings was akin to traversing the depths of the ocean, submerged and enveloped in a world that felt both familiar and distant. Paul brought up several financial matters I ought to address for my own protection. That thought hadn't crossed my mind at all. The dwelling, nuptials, financing for the vehicle. We maintained distinct accounts, one dedicated to the wedding and another for household expenses. I couldn't care less. The following day, I reached out to Jen via email, conveying that this would be our final correspondence. I informed her of my departure from the city for an indefinite period, and that the wedding, along with everything else, was no longer happening. I returned my father's call and engaged in a lengthy conversation. Though he was heartbroken, he grasped my need for time and space. He expressed that he still holds on to the hope that we might find a way to resolve it. After a span of 10 days, I found myself boarding a plane destined for the enchanting shores of Bali. I did not respond to her messages or emails, nor to anyone else's. Uncertainty lingers over whether she departed the hotel that night or chose to remain within its confines. I was indifferent. Upon my arrival in Bali, I found myself retreating into a bottle for the ensuing month, disconnecting from the world, save for my father and my professional obligations. I was indifferent to the possibility of losing my job. I longed to express that I found joy in the experience, yet I was predominantly lost in a haze of intoxication. A surge of rage, shame, and hatred coursed through me as I reflected on how events unfolded. I maintained communication with Paul regarding my leave, and after 3 weeks, he inquired if I could make a quick trip back to Tokyo to tend to a few matters. We discussed the emerging global virus, and I brought up my plans to return to Canada to sort things out, as I had been hearing whispers of possible lockdowns. Arriving in Tokyo on March 1st, I felt a familiar thrill at the prospect of returning to work, even if only in small doses. Upon learning that lockdowns were imminent, Paul suggested I return to Canada, but I merely shrugged it off. It will merely be a span of 30 or 60 days. Time is essential for me to strategize my next step. 30 to 60 days? Forget me. During my remaining year in Japan, the thought of returning home lost its appeal, even as the time for vaccination approached. My house has been rented out, and while I was conversing with family, they declined to share any information about Jen. On September 21st, I learned that my father had suffered a heart attack. Fortunately, he was doing well, but he would require a triple bypass surgery. This procedure carries significant weight. It may not carry the same weight as it did 4 decades ago, yet I still felt the urge to see him, just in case. I am acutely aware that upon my return home, chaos will inevitably ensue, a scenario I had hoped to avoid. I long to reunite with my family and express my gratitude to Paul for everything he has done for me, even in my moments of selfishness. Yet I am acutely aware that our paths will cross again, and I find myself at a loss regarding the emotions and thoughts that will arise within me. I apologize for the length of this message. Despite that, I omitted quite a bit. Any guidance, suggestions, or barbs would be welcomed. In just 4 hours, I will take to the skies, embarking on a journey that will culminate in approximately 24 hours. Announcement. Upon my arrival, I made my way to visit my father. He appears well and is genuinely anticipating the upcoming surgery. Mom is holding up, yet there's an unmistakable hint of worry beneath the surface. I devoted nearly the entirety of the first 24 hours in his company, and it seems we conversed about every conceivable topic imaginable. However, nothing too burdensome. I wish to avoid causing him any stress. I assured him of my support, yet I intend to use this journey as an opportunity to realign my life. Shut a few doors behind you and embrace the possibilities that await beyond others. On the second day, Paul and I gathered at a nearby location near the office. Paul is already pouring the alcohol into him. We engaged in a brief exchange, discussing my father, my job, and he inquired whether I had been in touch with Jen, to which I replied in the negative. He then tells me that the old man, the boss, wishes to see me, but given my father's situation, it can wait. I understand the gravity of my situation and suggest we might as well confront it head-on. This month, I've compiled a list of tasks to tackle, and it seems only fitting to begin checking them off one by one. Encountering Jen stands out as one of those moments. As I stepped into the office, it felt as though an eternity had passed since my last visit. Numerous familiar faces absent, a handful of newcomers, and the ever-present regulars. A handful of individuals acknowledged my presence with a nod and a greeting. We made our way to the old man's office, a place I had yet to explore. As we entered, he gestured for us to take a seat. The old man was a stranger to me, his voice a mystery I had yet to uncover. He occasionally strolls across the floor, yet people merely part ways as if Moses were parting the Red Sea. The dialogue that ensued was as follows. An elderly gentleman. Good morning, sirs. This meeting is exclusive, and all discussions held within are confidential, words upon words, endlessly flowing. The elderly gentleman launches into a fervent discourse on the virtues of responsibility and dedication, and I must concede, he makes some compelling arguments. He gazes at Paul and inquires why they ought to retain my presence. Paul asserts that he produces exceptional work. He has preserved existing accounts and successfully garnered numerous new ones. Moreover, we are struggling to locate anyone willing to take on the role for the 20% below market salary that we are currently offering. What on earth? Then Paul, along with the old man, bursts into maniacal laughter. Reminiscent of that bar scene in Goodfellas, the elderly gentleman brushes a tear from his eye and confides in Paul that this is precisely why he considers him the finest vice president he has ever had. I earn a decent income, yet really, come on. I sense a certain degree of offense. The elderly gentleman gazes at me, inclining his body closer. Hey there. I understand you've been facing some challenges with your partner. Allow me to offer you a piece of guidance. He mentions the name of a certain individual he is referencing. I may not recall every word precisely, but this captures the essence of it. Divine hands bestow upon women their eyebrows, yet they choose to pluck them away, crafting new ones in their place. A woman is bestowed with a face by God, yet she chooses to adorn it with a new visage atop the original. She is blessed with curves, and she chooses to enhance them with a push-up water bra. God bestows upon her a shape, yet her discontent lingers, prompting her to acquire form-fitting attire in a quest to alter that very shape. If even the divine fails to win her favor, what hope do you have? My dear brother, I implore you, do not take such a drastic step. That truly left me a bit astonished, I must admit. The elderly gentleman gazes intently at Paul. I have confidence in your ability to manage this with care. If I must let you go, your mother will surely be furious with me. It has finally dawned on me. They are indeed connected. As Paul and I step outside, I turn to him and remark, 20% man, seriously? He drapes his arm around me and reassures, don't worry about that. I have you taken care of. Am I facing termination or some form of disciplinary action? No, you fool. You are being elevated to a new position. He wraps his arm around me, planting a gentle kiss on the side of my head. You might have mentioned that earlier, you jerk. No, it was far more amusing like this. I've been thinking about you, kid. Now, let us embark on a journey to indulge in some reckless abandon. The clock strikes 8:30 in the morning, Paul. Who would even do such a thing? I do indeed. There remains much for you to discover in the art of savoring life. This behavior from him is hardly unexpected. What can I anticipate from an individual who indulged in sake to excess, found themselves embroiled in a brawl with a monkey, and, it should be noted, emerged on the losing end of that encounter at the hot springs in Japan? We ultimately found ourselves quite inebriated. We engaged in a conversation about our professional endeavors and the unfolding events that lay ahead. We discussed Jen, and he suggested that I ought to meet her to find some closure. He remarked that we both made foolish choices, yet we are fundamentally good individuals. Once I attain closure, I will be free to advance into my future, unburdened by the weight of lingering emotions. He mentioned that once that matter is settled, we can discuss my career prospects, my aspirations, and the direction I wish to take. That has now been marked off the list. At the very least, I am fortunate to still have employment. Father appears to be in fine form. The matter of Jen lingers in my mind, a persistent presence that refuses to fade away. I unblocked her on Facebook and began to scroll through, bracing myself for what lay ahead. I reached out with a private message, inquiring if we might arrange a dinner together in the near future. Our interaction was limited to polite conversation, and we have plans to share a meal in the coming days. That shall be the focus of my forthcoming update. Jen and I settled on a rendezvous at a restaurant a few hours post her work shift. As I ventured into this, I found myself grappling with two fears: whether my anger would persist, guiding my actions, or my love for her would endure, shaping my choices. I sought to discover a cozy balance within the ambiguous realm. Every intention I had vanished the instant she stepped into the room. She appeared absolutely radiant. She approached with a smile, and I felt my stomach rise into my throat. I didn't feel this anxious when we first shared that intimate moment together. We exchanged a brief, somewhat clumsy embrace, and the familiar scent of my favorite perfume enveloped me. Is she on the verge of overwhelming me with affection or weaving some emotional games? Is she involved with someone else, perhaps here to reveal what I overlooked? Her fingers remained bare, untouched by the ring I once placed upon them. Our conversation began with my father, and she shared that she consistently checked in on him during her shifts. She reassured me that his surgeon for the impending bypass was among the finest in the field. We engaged in light conversation about her overwhelming workload during the pandemic and my experiences during the lockdown in Tokyo. I was on the brink of breaking down. On the surface, I maintained an air of calm and composure, yet beneath it all, I was unraveling. I convinced myself that this was essential to solidify these emotions, paving the way for my long-awaited progress. We had been circling the elephant in the room for what felt like an eternity, and then she turned to me, her expression shifting dramatically. Everything that followed is a haze. I shall narrate it to the best of my capabilities. Initially, I wish to express my deep regret for the events that transpired and for the pain I caused you. Do you regret being discovered, or do you genuinely feel remorse for the pain you've caused me? I truly regret the impact it had on you, on our lives, and on the future we envisioned. I discarded it, driven by my own insecurities. Did you orchestrate this out of your own insecurities? Or was it a hidden desire to exact punishment for the company I kept during our time apart? Perhaps a combination of the two. However, I must express that any other man who was part of my life prior to our engagement, my heart has never known a love as profound as the one I felt for you. Tim, the one who came before me, betrayed my trust, claiming he could never match the depth of the emotions I held for you. That was the reason for our breakup. I was unaware of this, and to be truthful, I never felt any remorse over his infidelity. I never intended for you to discover that I was going to share my bed with another man. I believed I could distance myself emotionally, and even if you discovered the truth, we could navigate it together as we have with everything else we've faced. Your assumptions were quite misguided. It was likely the most excruciating ordeal I have ever endured. Your perfection or experience was never a requirement for me. I simply longed for you to belong to me. None of them, Jen, not a single one could ever compare to what I experienced with you. Yet now, I find myself pondering whether it was a genuine emotion or merely the reflection of the dreams our family held for us, or perhaps the illusion we had anticipated. As emotions began to swell, Jen quietly excused herself, retreating to the washroom to gather her thoughts. We found ourselves in a cozy, medium-sized restaurant where only a handful of tables were filled. Paul accompanied us for support, as some of you noted, and positioned himself thoughtfully in the sealed-off lounge. I glanced over, seeking a nod of encouragement or a reassuring thumbs up, only to find him engaged in a lively discussion with two rather captivating women. With laughter and expressive hand gestures, it was a complete spectacle. He finally glances my way, offering a questioning thumbs up, and I respond with a nod, assuring him that all is well. He flashed a smile before raising his middle finger with a sly smirk, then returned to his extracurricular pursuits. This guy, I can't even... Jen returns, and we continue where we left off. Do you have any questions regarding that evening? It is irreversible. It holds no significance. Silence reigned, and nothing transpired. I found myself questioning whether I was truly capable of achieving it. Your call to the room sent a jolt of fear through me, prompting a frantic dash to the lobby, only to find you had already vanished. It holds no significance at this moment. I have no intention of revisiting what has already transpired. I wish for us to focus on progress ahead. Will you find it in your heart to forgive me? I can certainly extend my forgiveness to you, and indeed, I do forgive you. You are not a terrible individual. Your recent decisions have led us to this unfortunate situation. Not everything rests on your shoulders. I ought to have embraced your concerns with greater openness and understanding. A whirlwind of emotions swept through me, oscillating between love, anger, and regret. A part of me yearned to unleash my frustration upon her, while another part longed to whisk her away, erasing this moment from existence. In recent weeks, I have immersed myself in a series of Reddit videos on YouTube, all in anticipation of this conversation. Observing these men inflicting suffering upon themselves for the transgressions of their significant others, which had caused far greater harm than the act of infidelity itself, was a poignant sight. I was resolute in my decision to avoid being that person. And as I gaze upon her, the echoes of the old man's words swirl through my thoughts. Adorned visage, polished fingertips, and a figure-hugging gown. Do I truly know her at all? Does her external facade reflect the inner workings of her mind? Do all their minds operate in unison? I steeled myself. What comes next? Will there be a future for us? Recall those days of our childhood when we strolled home from the park and that fierce dog came charging towards us. Instinctively, I positioned myself before you, driven by a deep-seated need to shield and rescue you. The owner summoned the dog, and it dashed away with enthusiasm. It was just a fleeting moment, yet for a 9-year-old, it felt profoundly terrifying. After all these years, I found myself standing before you, filled with love and ready to shield you from whatever challenges lay ahead. Yet in that moment when I bared my soul before you, offering all that I had, you chose to plunge a knife into my back. Much like the tale of the frog and the scorpion, this revelation struck her with the force of a lightning bolt, causing her to bow her head and weep softly. I had not yet completed my task. I felt compelled to express everything within me. I apologize. With a deliberate motion, she retrieves the ring box and gently glides it across the table toward me. I shall leave it at that. This is not what I desire. I am utterly frustrated. Do you really believe I desire to be here, my heart racing in my chest, while you weep? I long to be at home, cherishing moments with the little one we would have welcomed by now. The details of the ensuing moments elude my memory entirely. She collapsed into tears, burying her face in her hands. I have uttered some regrettable words in my life, but that particular remark truly stands out. I expressed my regret and acknowledged that I had crossed a line. It jolted me out of my fury. As the conversation settled and I released that pent-up energy, we found ourselves engaged in a genuine discussion about the future and the life that awaited us. Our parents share a remarkable closeness, with her mom and dad feeling like my second family, and the sentiment is mutual. We discuss the ways in which we might share this space as companions. Reconciliation is off the table. As she rose to depart, we embraced for what felt like an eternity. I shall leave this for now and complete the remainder tomorrow. The past few days have stretched on endlessly,